Hey everybody, so here's the assignment for this week based on the videos. But before we get into it, I just want to show you one error that I made in the tutorial, which is when I encapsulated this section of the patch, it broke my attrui because attruis don't pass through outlets and connect to the object outside the subpatcher. This attrui is actually now inspecting the attributes of this outlet object, so we can see all of the stuff that we would expect to see in a jit.gl.layer is missing from the attrui because it's no longer connected to the attrui. So your options are to de-encapsulate this and leave the attrui outside the encapsulation. This will work, but it also kind of defeats the purpose of encapsulation if you've got all this junk hanging out outside your attrui. So other solutions would be to just put a toggle outside the attrui that is connected to this enable. Then I've got a nice little on-off switch sitting outside my encapsulation. And this is going to allow me to turn on and off that layer remotely. Another option would be to not use an attrui here at all, but to format this message so that it begins with the word color, and now this message will pass through the outlet, so I can encapsulate as before, and it'll be functional. So for this assignment, I want to begin with an intuition that you may have had. And if you didn't have it, that's fine. But if you did have it, that's great. That shows that you're really sort of taking the next conceptual step in Max. Because we have this line object that outputs a ramp of values. And we have the function object which responds to a ramp of values. And we didn't see these two objects connected together. But if you're grasping how both of these objects work, the possibility of driving the function with the line might have occurred to you. So here, this line is going to go from its current location of 0 to 1,000 over 5 seconds. And since the default domain of a function is 1,000, this line will now play that shape, will play that function. And it's easiest to see it with a multislider, as we've seen, setting that multislider to a range of 0 to 1 and visualizing it as a bar. And we can play it backwards, back down to 0. Now it's playing this backwards. And if we just want to jump it from one value to another, we can use a comma in a message box. So if we always want it to go from 0 to 1,000 over 5 seconds, not from its current location, but from 0 to 1000 over 5 seconds, we can use this form, 0, comma, space, 1000, 5000. Jump to 0, and then ramp to 1000 over 5 seconds. And now this is a message that we can use over and over again because it always jumps back to 0 and then goes to 1000. That's someplace you might have gotten to, and if you didn't, hopefully you see how it flows from the two concepts that we looked at, the line object and the function object. So here's a next one that may have potentially occurred to you when we talked about resting one object on top of another object. What if we were to put a multislider on top of a function? Let's try that. I'm going to go into the multislider inspector. I'm going to change this to a horizontal multislider. I'm going to set its range to be 0 to 1000, and I'm going to set its background color to transparent. And let's just see what happens if we connect this up to our line and stick it over top of our function. I get a progress bar that shows me the movement of the envelope. Now in this case we probably want to switch back to thin line and maybe give the slider a color to differentiate it from the background a little bit. Right, so now we've got a playhead that shows us where we are in that envelope. Very useful. And of course we can still have a multislider that is showing us the output of the function. Change to bar, range 0 to 1. So we have two multisliders, one showing us the horizontal progress through this shape. We call this an envelope, through this envelope, and the vertical slider showing us the current level. So with those two insights, I'm just going to introduce one more thing about the line object that I didn't show you before, which is the right outlet. The right outlet sends a bang when it's done, which puts us right back in the world of the feedback loop. Every time this ramp finishes, it starts again. And thinking in terms of intuitions, this immediately opens up a bunch of possibilities for us. For instance, some randomization here. Where we have a slow version, a medium version, and a fast version. And it will randomly play this shape back, either slow, medium, or fast, depending on the random number selection there. There's a fast one. And anything else that you want to put into this feedback loop to get some variation. Maybe you want to create the option of one of these being extremely long. So the assignment is to use this feedback function to create generative changes. And you can do this with video, you can do this with sound, you can do it with still images, you can do it with a combination. And what I mean by this is, I'll make a jit.gl.layer, turn on my world, grab an image, make a color attrui. Change my display mode to multi-number float. And now I have this value controlling the redness of the image according to the shape of this envelope. And you can see though, now I can't change my function because I have this multi-slider sitting on top of it. That's a problem you can solve just by going to the inspector and telling the multi-slider to ignore click. And now the mouse will reach through the multi-slider to adjust the function. So I can take this whole structure that I have here, duplicate it, and have a different process changing the green. And of course a third process changing the blue. And I'm just applying this to color as an example. Apply it to transparency, apply it to scale, apply it to volume of a sound, apply it to any parameter that you want to modify. And because these are all changing their rate randomly, this is non-repeating. And in fact, another way to make it non-repeating that's even simpler is just to remove the randomness entirely. And simply have them be asynchronous. So this one is 5 seconds, this one's looping over 4.9 seconds, and this one's looping over 5.1 seconds. So they're going to drift in their phase with each other and give you an essentially endlessly varying pattern. This is a very simple form of generativity, where we're giving the computer some simple instructions. When it executes those instructions, it creates something that's not predictable, but is constantly changing. So take that idea and apply it to make a little generative piece this week. Something that you start it, and once it's going, it just keeps changing and permuting. This is really nice to do with layering of sounds. You might have 3 or 4 sounds, and they're going to be mixing together in different combinations as these envelopes progress.